Hello and welcome to this week's edition of World Today. I'm Geeta Mohan. The focus this week would be Saudi Arabia's efforts to forge peace between Russia and Ukraine, the coup in Niger, 2 years of the Taliban rule in Afghanistan and much more. Let's begin with the peace summit. Saudi Arabia and Turkey are emerging as the new peace brokers of the Russia-Ukraine war. In an effort to draw support from the global south, Saudi Arabia is hosting peace talks over the escalating Ukraine crisis with various Western states, Ukraine and significant developing countries such as India, which is also on the invitees list. This move signifies a broader international collaboration in resolving the Ukraine crisis, with hopes that talks could significantly help in finding peace terms that favor Ukraine. But with Russia out of the room, how will peace be negotiated?
Saudi Arabia is set to host Ukraine, the US, some European countries and major developing countries including India and Brazil for peace talks on the Russia-Ukraine war in Red Sea port city of Jeddah. The list of invitees is long. It includes Bahrain, Brazil, UK, European Commission, Korea, Italy, Turkey, Egypt, Poland, USA, Finland, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, China, Qatar, Jordan, Kuwait, Netherlands, Oman, Czech Republic, Canada, Spain, Ukraine, Slovakia, Japan, South Africa, Denmark, UAE and European Council. Many important stakeholders have confirmed participation.
We do, of course, support this summit. We have long said that it is important that Ukraine be in the driver's seat when it comes to any potential diplomatic resolution to this war. It's important that countries that have not yet heard directly from Ukraine hear from Ukraine, so we are gratified that there will be countries that will be attending this summit to talk directly with Ukraine. If your question was with respect to what other countries will be attending, I would defer to the governments of Saudi Arabia and Ukraine to answer that question. If the question is respect, I'm coming to you. You don't have to, you don't have to jump in. If the question is with respect to what U.S. government officials will be attending, I can confirm that there will be U.S. government officials, not ready to make announcements yet about who those will be. But as the week goes on, certainly you can expect that we will do so.
This is already the second meeting, and almost 40 countries will take part in it. The first meeting was in Copenhagen, and the third step will be the organization of the summit, the Global Peace Summit. We are working on making it happen this fall. At the summit, which needs the presence of the majority of the world and where the world's majority could be present, representatives of the North and South, East and West. Autumn is very soon, but there is still time to prepare for the summit and involve most of the world's countries.
While Russia has shown no signs of retreating from the front lines, Ukraine also seems keen on fighting it out on the battlefield on the back of its retaking of the key cities Kherson and Kharkiv, and billions of dollars worth of arms and equipment flowing in from Europe and the US. The development also comes on the heels of the recently held Russia-Africa summit, where the crisis in Ukraine was discussed along with food security issues, making it fundamentally clear that escalating tensions in Ukraine have become a global concern.
The African continent is indeed becoming a new center of power. Its political and economic role is growing exponentially. Everyone will have to take this reality into account. For example, let's look at the initiative by a number of African states on solving the Ukraine crisis, which is an acute problem. We are not shying away from reviewing it.
The leaders of Turkey and Saudi Arabia have led negotiations between Ukraine and Russia on large prisoner swaps and maritime safety agreements like the Black Sea grain deal. Saudi Arabia is increasing its political clout by enabling dialogue and in a way highlighting the rise of middle powers that maintain their independence amid a shifting world order. Bureau Report, India Today.
The other big story is the military coup in Niger. France and the European Union have begun evacuation of their nationals from Niger, the latest country in the Sahel region to witness a coup. Meanwhile, Niger has reopened its borders to its neighbors. Here is a report.
As Europe continues to evacuate its nationals from crisis-torn Niger, the country has announced reopening of its borders to its neighbors. The government had closed its borders on July 26th after the removal of President Mohamed Bazoum from power.
Announcement number 15. The land and air borders with Algeria, Burkina Faso, Mali, Libya and Chad are reopened from today, August 1, 2023. Done in Niamey on August 1, 2023. Signed by President of National Council for Safeguarding the Homeland.
Meanwhile, France, Italy and Spain have started evacuation of their citizens, fearing further escalation rising from the coup. Niger also hosts a French military base.
There are American citizens, there are also European passengers and non-European ones. Also an Australian, whom we managed to bring out of Niger and ensure their safety.
The West African regional body known as ECOWAS has announced travel and economic sanctions against Niger and said it could use force if coup leaders didn't reinstate Bazoum.
In the event the authorities' demands are not met within 1 week, take all measures necessary to restore constitutional order in the Republic of Niger. Such measures may include the use of force.
Bazoum, an ally of the West, has been in a fight with Islamist militants. Since the military coup, the ousted president came in public for the first time and met Chad leader, who's making efforts for mediation. Supporters of the junta have come out onto the streets of Niamey, waving Russian flags and chanting the name of Vladimir Putin. The protesters also denounced France, a former colonial power.
We have not seen any evidence that Russia was behind this coup, but certainly it would not be out of character for Russia or for the Wagner Group to try to take advantage of instability in this country or any other in Africa.
Niger, which is rich in uranium, is an important part of the Sahel region. The French and the European Union have provided assistance to Niger's military to fight against jihadist violence. Around 50% of the uranium is used for fueling the French nuclear power plants. The EU too imports about 24% of uranium from Niger. Mahashweta Lala for India Today.
Now, you educate a man, you educate a man. You educate a woman, you educate an entire generation. These powerful words of Brigham Young find resonance even today. But there are still some parts of the world where women are fighting for justice, equality and freedom. The Taliban rule has prevailed over Afghanistan for 2 years. Many promises were made, but none have been kept when it comes to Afghan women. The Taliban returned to power in Afghanistan in 2021, 20 years after their ouster by US troops. Under their harsh rule, they have cracked down on women's rights and have neglected basic services. The Taliban have prohibited most girls from attending secondary school, banned all women from attending and teaching at universities, and prevented women from working. The latest in a series of policies that restrict Afghan women's legal rights. Thousands of beauty salons across the country have been permanently closed following an order by the Taliban authorities. The abrupt move is expected to cut off one of the few revenue streams available to women, as well as a cherished space for socializing. Joining me from Washington, D.C. to discuss a little more about what's really happening in Afghanistan is a former envoy of Afghanistan to Canada, to France, Ambassador Omar Samad. Ambassador Samad, many thanks for joining us here on India Today. Let's begin with Let's begin with what's happening on the ground when it comes to women, because we have been focusing a lot on women in Afghanistan, many trying to break out of the shackles, but it seems like it's more regressive than progressive, and promises not being kept when it comes to women's freedom, liberty and equality.
Well, thank you for having me on. On the ground, as far as women are concerned, and girls, if I may add, who have been restricted from going to school beyond the 6th grade, the situation has not improved, unfortunately. The Taliban are still restricting some women from working with NGOs, and especially foreign NGOs. There are still some women working in the private sector quite a bit, but especially in the public sector, there have been some restrictions, even though the Taliban continue to pay the salary of all women civil servants, including teachers who may be at home. So there are teachers, women teachers, who are teaching schools grade 1 to 6. Unfortunately, after that, there is a ban. Now, the situation as such, but I think there's a need to continue to engage them on different fronts in different forms in order for this situation to change and for all of us to attain the results that we want for the Afghan women and girls.
Well, Ambassador Samad, for somebody who has been in the realm of diplomacy, foreign policy for so long, how do you propose then that Afghanistan can really move forward, given the fact that the world has not recognized the Taliban regime? Without recognition, how do you then see engagement or engaging the Taliban? Although we know that there are talks that are taking place between the Taliban and various countries, but no recognition.
You're absolutely correct. There's been no formal recognition, even though there's de facto engagement. And almost 20, if I'm not mistaken, countries have some kind of representation in Kabul. Some countries even at the level of ambassadors, even though there is no diplomatic recognition. And the Taliban are now have access to about a dozen or so Afghan embassies and consulates across the world. So there is a de facto type of relationship that has evolved over the last 2 years. Now, this, some people say, may be convenient for the Taliban. Others say it's not enough. We need to have a better view of what's happening on the ground. We need to have better facts and fact-finding missions that can give us an accurate reading of what's happening with the people, the economy, the security situation, so on and so forth. So some countries are now thinking about maybe reopening some type of a representation in Kabul, especially Western countries, but it's still early to tell. What is important is that the country is still a country, it's a nation. It's a state, but it's a government that has not been recognized, and part of it has to do with their own policies. They're responsible for some of the policies that is making it difficult for others to recognize them. And one of the issues that comes up always is the issue of representation, the issue of inclusivity, the issue of political participation, and making sure that in a country, a multi-ethnic country like Afghanistan, with diversity of views and diversity in society, in politics, that the Taliban be more accommodating, that they be more flexible, and they engage in dialogue with other Afghans. So I think it is going to be important to see how dialogue is going to take shape in Afghanistan moving forward. And dialogue has to be constructive, but also has to be purposeful, and it has to aim for change that is good for Afghanistan, its people, and hopefully acceptable to the rest of the world.
On that note, Ambassador Samad, many thanks for joining us here on India Today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Rating agency Fitch on Tuesday downgraded the U.S. government's top credit rating, leaving American authorities furious. The downgrade drew angry responses from various wings of the U.S. government and left investors surprised. But what does this rating downgrade mean? Here's a report.
The rating agency Fitch has downgraded the U.S. government's debt. It's a dramatic move that signals rising worries the U.S. might not be able to meet its fiscal obligations. The United States' prior rating, a AAA rating, was second to none. Tuesday's one-notch downgrade to AA+ sparked outcry from the White House and from U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who called it arbitrary and based on outdated data.
I strongly disagree with Fitch's decision, and I believe it is entirely unwarranted.
Fitch said it was concerned about both the rising level of American government debt and whether the country would, in the future, muster the political will to pay its bills. Here's Davide Barbusha, U.S. investment correspondent for Reuters.
The reason they decided to go ahead with the downgrade was because of long-standing concerns that were fiscal in nature. So looking, for instance, at the ratio of debt to GDP in the United States, which has been increasingly over the past several years, and also concerns related to the governance of the country. For instance, the last debt ceiling deal was essentially agreed just a few days before the so-called X date, when the government would have potentially been in a situation in which it would have not been able to pay its bills.
This week's downgrade came after a congressional deal in June that suspended the debt ceiling until 2025. But Fitch wasn't just alarmed by rising debt and political gridlock. It also cited the January 6th Capitol riot.
When speaking to Richard Francis, who is a senior director at Fitch, he explained how the political polarization in the United States was a contributing factor in Fitch's decision to downgrade the government. Another episode that was highlighted in conversations between the rating agency and the Treasury was January 6th insurrection, which again exemplifies that type of political polarization that we have been talking about.
The rating agency highlighted events from January 6, 2021 in meetings with the Treasury ahead of the downgrade decision. Fitch referenced polarization with both parties, saying, quote, "The Democrats have gone further left and Republicans further right, so the middle is kind of falling apart, basically," adding, "We don't fault one party or the other for the fiscal situation."
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his wife Sophie announced that they are separating, ending the couple's 18-year high-profile marriage. Trudeau, 51, and Sophie Gregoire Trudeau, 48, were married in late May 2005. They have 3 children. Trudeau's office said that the two had signed a legal agreement. After Trudeau became Prime Minister in late 2015, he and Sophie were often seen together at social functions and on foreign trips. But in recent years, Sophie has curtailed such appearances with her husband. The two of them did travel to London in May for the coronation of King Charles and were together when US President Joe Biden visited late March. UNESCO has recommended Venice to be added under World Heritage in Danger list ahead of its 45th meet that is to be held in September. Climate change and over-tourism are some major issues for which Venice has been recommended under the danger list. Take a look.
The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization has recommended that one of the most popular and fragile tourist destinations of Italy, Venice, be added to its list of World Heritage in Danger, a designation that is given when a vulnerable heritage site is in need of support. The recommendation to put Venice on the World Heritage in Danger list was made by UNESCO and its advisory body experts ahead of the 45th session of the agency's World Heritage Committee meet, which will be held in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia in September this year. Mass tourism, development projects and climate change are some major reasons behind UNESCO's recommendation to put Venice under the danger list. According to the organization, these issues are causing deterioration and damage to the building structures and to the urban areas, degrading the cultural and social identity of the property and threatening the integrity to its cultural, environmental, landscape attributes and values. UNESCO has asked the Italian government to ensure that utmost attention is given to Venice and its long-standing problems should be addressed that have been causing damage to the city. Over-tourism in Venice has been a serious issue. Venice is one of the places that is currently designated as a World Heritage Site because of its outstanding universal value, cultural and natural offerings. With Neha Kumari, Bureau Report, India Today.
A video of a bear at a Chinese zoo has sparked an online debate on its authenticity. Released on the 28th of July, the video showed a sun bear standing on its legs inside its enclosure at Hangzhou Zoo as visitors looked on. Chinese netizens questioned if the bear was a man dressed in a costume due to the bear's human-like stance and folds of loose skin on its back. The zoo responded in a light-hearted manner, posting a statement on WeChat where they role-played as the bear. Meanwhile, another zoo in England has also released a footage of one of its Malayan sun bears standing upright. The Malayan sun bear earned its name from the bright golden patch on its chest. It is the smallest member of the bear family and can be found in the dense lowland forests of Southeast Asia. That's all in this edition of World Today, but before I go, I leave you with visuals from a wedding in Malolos after a typhoon hit the Philippines. Eyewitness video showed a bride walking down a flooded aisle in a wedding gown. The Philippines was hit by Typhoon Doksuri, and here are the visuals. Goodbye and take care.